The Chiefs offense had to evolve and change going into this Super Bowl season, and it's going to have to do it again. Today on Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Offense is going to evolve. Thanks for making us your first listen, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. You can always get a listen here to any sport, any team that you're looking for. Check out the rest of the network. Brought to you today by FanDuel, and they do a great job because they're official sportsbook of the NFL as well as the NBA. And you can make every moment count with them at FanDuel.com/LockedOn. Get into the action over there today. Lot to go over because things are starting to change, and it's going to have a ripple. And as different as this season was from last season on the offensive side, it might be just as different again. We're going to get to that right now. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics and Performance Consulting, NFL33.com, and RGR Football.
And I'm Chris Clark. Thank you all for listening. We do appreciate it. If you've not already on YouTube, please go hit the like, subscribe, and notification bell so you can know when we have more videos. There's going to be a lot more coming out over the next couple of months because we are getting into the offseason, which can be a fun time because now you get to start building for the next Super Bowl, which is Super Bowl 58. And a lot of people out there are already saying, win this one for Derek.
I was going to say it's the year of DT. But I want to put the brakes on for a minute because I feel like, yes, that's our natural progression. It doesn't feel like we're relishing this enough, in my opinion, right now. It feels like the fan base is like, great, 2 rings. Let's go get another one. Let's go right now. And I know Patrick's excited about that, and that's what he said. But like, take a step back and let's realize just how incredible this was in a year that I am still convinced that the front office and the coaching staff believed that this was a rebuild year, that they weren't going to get a chance to fight for a championship. So, like, I just feel like the fan base isn't enjoying it enough.
I agree with that, but I also think that they got more from their rookie class than they ever thought they would. And I think that that's really what it comes down to. They drafted very well when it comes to all the DBs that they brought in, and they did a very good job there. And I think that they got more than they expected to there. And then, when you have Patrick and you add the pieces around him that they were able to add around him and he's able to make it all work, I think that really put them in the right position to be able to go succeed and be as successful as they were. And you also have to look at it and thank guys like Rick Burkholder and all of the trainers. They keep this team pretty healthy year round.
Yeah.
You look at guys that miss and teams that have a lot of players miss. That isn't the issue here in Kansas. That isn't an issue here in Kansas City. I'm not saying that injuries don't happen, but they don't happen as much as they seem to other places, and that's huge.
Well, and I think what we've seen this week in the wake of the Super Bowl is from out of the mouths of both Brett Veach and Travis Kelce about just how much goes into that, and the fact that Kadarius Toney has been in working with the trainers every day to try to be healthier than what he was able to do in New York. That's just part of it because Kadarius Toney is part of what changed this offense, and it's going to happen more, but he's not the biggest chunk. I think the biggest chunk is still ongoing right now, and it looks like after 7 years of exploration, we may actually see Eric Bieinemy go elsewhere.
Yeah, and unfortunately for him, it's not for a job that would be a move up. It's more of a lateral position change. Unfortunately, I think that that's the only way he's going to be able to get the opportunity that he really wants, which is to be a head coach. I think he deserves it at this point. And quite frankly, I don't know what the NFL is waiting on. I think that he's shown that he can be successful. Whether or not you believe that he calls plays, I don't think that's really the big deal. You look at what he's able to do with Mahomes, and no, I'm not saying he's the only reason Mahomes is as good as he is, but he is the conduit. He's a funnel between Reid and Mahomes and the QB coach, and getting all of that together and scouting and getting ready for different opponents. He was the reason that they had that play, the corn dog play. So he has done plenty in his time in Kansas City. So looks like he could be moving on to DC.
Well, I think it does come back to the play calling thing because I think everybody gets underestimated when you work for Andy Reid. So like, I do think that going to Washington would be a way to be like, you will actually be the guy that designs and calls the plays. There will be no question anymore. There'll be no more, well, how much is it? And how much is Andy overriding and all that kind of stuff? I think that does bring clarity to the situation. And I think it's good for him. I think that's a team that has enough interesting pieces that maybe he can do something with. And yet there's still a lot of ceiling yet to go. Whereas how much ground can you cover? when you've been in the Super Bowl 3 out of 4 years, you have Patrick Mahomes. Like, I think part of this is we all know he's got kind of a gruff, abrasive personality, one that old school dudes like me appreciate, one that maybe some new school owners don't. But there's just no ceiling for him. He can't really make his mark, A, because it's Andy Reid that he works for, and B, they've already been so successful. I don't think he can show the ability to leapfrog an offense.
Oh, and that's fair. I think that it's what you're going to see is I think he's going to go to DC and he's going to go to a defensive-minded head coach, so he's able to basically take over the offense and do his own thing. And we'll see what he's able to do in the next couple of years if he's able to prove that he deserves to be a head coach based on just strictly play calling, because that's really all it is at this point that would seem to be holding him back.
Yeah, that's my thought as too. I think it's great that he's earned this. I think he's earned it a few years ago. I think he should be a head coach by now. But I think the opportunity to go somewhere and really devise your own offense, your version of the Reid offense, of the West Coast offense, I think that will seal the deal. And I think eventually he still will be a head coach.
Yeah, and to be clear, he is a free agent right now. He is not under contract with the Chiefs. He was only on a one-year deal, so that's why he's able to go do this. And Kansas City is looking at it from a perspective of Reid wants him to be a head coach. Mm-hmm. That's what Andy Reid wants for him. So he understands why he would be looking elsewhere as opposed to coming back in Kansas City.
And let's be real, Ron Rivera comes from part of the tree as well. Like there's enough crossover there that it can link up. And I think that commonality should help the transition as well. And Ron's gone through a lot the last few years. I think he needs a guy that he can lean on and rely on and is the old school type that he really is as well. We know about Ron Rivera's cancer diagnosis and all that. I do think that this is a good pairing for a couple of ex-Reid subs assistants that can really move forward together. I'm excited about that.
Yeah, and I hope that he's able to get the distinguishment that he deserves, I guess, is the only way to put it. I think that you look at what he's done in Kansas City, and you're right, he doesn't get enough credit for what he's been able to do. Some of the play design, some of the scouting, all of that, some of that falls on Bieinemy. And the problem is you don't know what falls on Bieinemy unless somebody comes out and says it. And Reid went out and said it in the owners' meetings, and it doesn't seem to change anybody's mind. So this is probably the only way he's going to get a chance to do what he wants to do. Yeah,
it's unfortunate, but it looks like it's going to happen. Nothing official yet, folks. We'll let you know when there is. But what happens if Eric Bieinemy does move on like we do anticipate now? We're going to talk about who becomes the OC next. On the backside of this, a message from our friends over at FanDuel, because the football season's over, yes, we know. But the NBA season is in full swing, and March Madness is coming down your way. And it's perfect time to go download FanDuel, the #1 sports book in America for both the NBA and the NFL. You get a no-sweat first bet right now for up to $1,000 bonus in bets if your first bet doesn't win. So download the app, sign up for FanDuel Sportsbook. It's safe, secure, and really, really easy to use. And you can bet everything from money line to point scorers to anything in the basketball world. And if it fails, you get $1,000 in free bets. You can bind them all into a same-game parlay in any kind of order that you like. Don't miss your chance right now for that no-sweat first bet. Up to $1,000 in bonus bets when you go to FanDuel.com/lockedon. It's down there underneath Chris. FanDuel.com/lockedon and learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sportsbook betting partner of the NFL and the NBA. Now, if I was going to bet, it'd probably be on who's going to be the next OC because I have a feeling I can make some money there. I don't know that this is much of a mystery, but who gets that job?
I think it has to be Matt Nagy, and I'm sure that's where you were going with that. I just think that that's probably where he's headed at this point. QB coach is one of those guys that's usually in line to be the next OC. That's where Kafka was, and you look at what Kafka was able to do in New York, and I think that if this happened last year, Nagy probably would have been, still where he is, and maybe Kafka was going to be the OC because I think he was probably ready, and they knew he was ready last year.
Well, I agree with you. It is going to be Matt Nagy, and I think the thing that confirms that, a nice little clip. When Patrick came off after the Sky Moore touchdown in the Super Bowl, he comes over to Nagy, and he said, we weren't even in the dang right formation, and it's Nagy that's celebrating with him. It's the fact that they had come up with that, and they were integral in the back and forth, and I think that relationship is something that's definitely different than it is with Eric Bieinemy, but it's also something I think leads towards more creativity. So I think in having Matt Nagy in place, in-house right now, it's an easy transition. The question then becomes, who becomes the quarterback coach? Do you have a feeling for that?
I don't. That's going to be a great question. They have a couple of offensive quality control coaches that maybe they would look at, but the QB coach could be somebody completely different and not even in the system right now. I do think that they're. Go ahead. Do you have somebody you have in mind?
I got a scenario for you. I want to know what you think, because we've seen the progression for Coach Lewis from wide receivers to running backs. Now, there's only one other spot on the offense to go for a guy who teaches skill positions, right? And I think that makes a lot of sense for a guy that's been around the game, who's played for Andy, who's coached for Andy. If you're going to learn from Andy and an OC, that's the best spot to be. Now, Joe Blameyer's put in a lot of work as well. A lot of the what was that play in Super Bowl 54? The spin around deal from the Rose Bowl. Evidently, he found that, he and Eric Bieinemy, right? So, like, Joe's an option there. I don't feel like his resume is quite as good, but I feel like the guy that's most likely on the staff right now that could become the next QB coach is Lewis. Do you think I'm wrong?
I could definitely see that. It wouldn't shock me if they went that direction, but it also wouldn't shock me if they go outside the organization. You know, there's a lot of people talking about bringing in guys that are not in the organization right now to be a QB coach. So it's going to be interesting to see who it is. There's a name out there that people have thrown around that I don't really see happening in Cliff Kingsbury, but there are a lot of people. No, he came back because they wanted to interview him for an OC position somewhere, and I can't remember where it was, but he did not get it. So he is back in the U.S. I don't see him being the QB coach of Kansas City. That's my personal opinion. And I definitely could see Greg Lewis going, because you're right. He's already been, QB. He's already been wide receiver. He's already been running back. QB would be the next position, because that would be the next position you would think he would becoming the next possible offensive coordinator if Nagy was to go somewhere else.
Yeah, I agree with you. A couple of other little notes. Quality control coach on the offensive side, Connor Embry, is a Bieniemy connection. I would expect him to go with him if he does depart. I don't think there's much change on the defensive side unless Spags is just super happy to have another ring and decides to retire. I don't think there's going to be a lot of change there. We could see a little bit.
What about David Girardi, really quick? He's the assistant QB coach.
Right. Like, I think that's a possibility, but I haven't seen enough of him be active. I know in the film Blameyer's been there, and I know that Lewis has been there. And maybe that's just something we don't know. It doesn't mean it can't happen, because behind the scenes, we all know how much the Chiefs actually let out in terms of who's doing what.
Which is
exactly.
0.
I think the bigger part of it is that he is really focused, Girardi is, on the pass game. So I do feel like that does make an interesting twist there. I still feel like both Lewis and Blameyer would be in front of him. But maybe I'm wrong, and maybe he leapfrogs somebody. Maybe those guys and their age versus his is a little bit different, and maybe they want to take a different path. So it's a good job bringing that up, because I hadn't really connected that one, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, that'd definitely be something that would be interesting. I think it's kind of outside the box, but I think it could see that happening. But we have a little bit more to talk about and how this is going to affect Patrick Mahomes when we get to the backside of this. But I want to tell you about our friends over at Ultimate Football GM. If you've not checked this game out yet, I do not know why you haven't. It is a very fun game to play. I absolutely love playing the Ultimate Football GM. You've heard us talk about this mobile game app, and I cannot tell you or stress as much as fun as it really has been. I took third place in our group of hosts. So Chris Carter took first of Locked On Steelers. He was the NFL champion. I took third. Won a couple Super Bowls. Had a good time regardless. Played 25 seasons, and you really get into the nitty-gritty of what you can do as a GM. And I think this game really shows you all the different aspects that you get to do as a GM. You hire the right coaches and coordinators. We've just been talking about that. You get to trade players, navigate your franchise through free agency and the draft, and taking care of your cap space. That is also a big thing in this game. So it's something you have to pay attention to. All this in a challenging and realistic game world. Ultimate Football GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. We've created a Locked On League for you to compete against Locked On fans all over the world. Can you be the ultimate Locked On Football GM? Choose the Locked On League in the app to join. Can you create a football dynasty? And it is Locked On, all in caps. Locked On Chiefs listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using promo code Locked On, all caps, in the game store. That's Locked On in all caps, so make sure you check it out today. To download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up on the app stores. That's ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Is it all caps?
It is all caps.
Okay. Just want to make sure. Okay, good. So
Appreciate that.
Hey, I'm here for you. So in this change, and again, being the lead domino being Eric Bieinemy, and what changes in the staff, I am, and I have been since he came back, a proponent of Matt Nagy getting that job. Not only do I think he will, but I think he'll be great at it. And I think that opens up a new look for what the offense can be with Patrick under the helm, right? But there are other factors that go into it. And one, obviously, being the addition of Kadarius Toney. We know some of the free agent wide receivers. We're going to talk about them in particular next week, folks. So make sure you join us. Remember, here at Lockdown, we are 5 days a week, so don't let that slip. But the bigger question right now is, depending on who becomes, like you said, could Girardi slide into the quarterback coach slot? Who works best with Nagy? Who develops those kind of things? Who's got the open mind when the players come up with new plays? That happens all the time, and it happens in one room in particular. I know Travis has a lot of input and has some crazy ideas, but a lot of this craziness happens in the QB room. And with Chad Henne's retirement, I think that is a bigger question now, because if you're going to name 3 guys that have input into what Patrick Mahomes does on Sundays, it's the OC, the QB coach, and the guys in his room. I can't single out Shane Bichelle because I've not been in the room, but I know Chad Henne had a lot of influence on how Patrick saw things, when he saw things, and how he went about his business. That's a big, big thing. And I think that's the question, is we got to see, how old do you want the room to be? Do you think that Patrick's seasoned enough now that they take a chance and they go young? What do you think has to happen?
It would not shock me that they go young. I think that you look at Mahomes heading into basically his 7th year, 6 years to starter. I think they could go young, and maybe Shane is the guy that they go with, or maybe they go out and then draft a guy. I'm not sure what they're going to do. They have a ton of draft picks. We're going to be talking about that in the coming weeks as to what they could do with their draft picks. And I would not be shocked if Kansas City starts drafting QBs, not every year maybe, but every other year or every 3 years, just because you want to be able to develop a guy. If they believe Shane is that guy, then okay, fine. But if they don't, maybe they go draft a guy that they think they can develop, and they look at bringing in a veteran. And it may not be a veteran that they bring in until almost camp is ready to start. Mm-hmm. They may not know until camp is getting ready to go. You know, you could bring in another rookie type for OTAs to get them ready for all of that, to see how that goes and to see how your rookies do when you do that. And then maybe you bring somebody in that's a veteran when you get ready to go into, training camp. So we'll see what they end up doing. I would expect that at this point, like I said, with him being in his 6th year starting, or headed into 6 years starting, I think that they could go away from having a veteran, though it does bring a lot of experience, and it brings a lot of ability to read defenses and that knowledge into the game. And I think you can see, based on what happened in this year's playoffs, how valuable Chad Henne was to this team.
Yeah, absolutely. I will say this too. There's a couple of situations that I kind of like when I look at the free agent list here. And tops of my list, you Mizzou fans are going to dig this, because Chase Daniel's a free agent again. He's been here. He's done that. He knows the room. He knows the staff. He knows Patrick. Like, I love the concept of him coming back. I don't know if you saw him on NFL on 33rd team making his comments about the post game, but he was kind of gushing. Might have been a subtle word for what he was doing. I like the concept of Chase Daniel coming back. Do you see that even as a possibility at 37 yeyears old?
Henne was 38.
Yeah.
If they think he can come back and do it, I think that would not shock me. I mean, because here's the other side of it. If they think that he could come in, and I think the other question that you ask is he a guy that can come in for more than 1 year? And I know you only want to pay attention to 1 year, but if you want to get continuity right, and you want to get to a point where you think Patrick can be on his own and maybe not need that veteran presence, if you got another veteran guy for another 2 years, then he's headed into year 8 starting. And I think you have to get to a point where you feel like at that point, he's obviously going to know what he's got going on. And Patrick will be the first to tell you there is always things that he needs to work on in his game. And he is going to determine what he feels like he needs to work on from his game from this past season. So that's going to be something that's going to be fascinating to me to watch over this next couple of months.
Yeah, I agree. Let me give you a couple of names, and you pick who you like here. I don't think Sam Darnold can compete for a starting job, but he could be a solid backup. What about 87-year-old Joe Flacco should be out there? Jacoby Brissett, who is surprisingly 31 years old. You come down the line a little bit more and you get into Taylor Heineke, who I think somebody might give an opportunity to compete for a starting job, but you never know. You come down to guys like Josh Johnson, Nathan Peterman, Josh Dobbs, even Cooper Rush, who I think if the Cowboys don't bring back Cooper Rush, they're insane. I do think that will get done, but I just want to put his name out there because it's out there. I think the same thing for Tyler Huntley. We don't know what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson, so that's a big question there. And then, everybody's favorite Gardner Minshew.
Yeah, and I love that you bring up we don't know what's going to happen with Lamar Jackson because they weren't telling OCs that they interviewed with that Lamar was definitely going to be back in 2023. So that is going to be something to watch. Joe Flacco is an interesting name, and I don't say it because I really would like to see Flacco in Kansas City, but he has a connection to Reed through Harbaugh. So, I would think that would be a little bit of something we'll have to see whether or not they want to go that direction. I don't know. There's so many different ways they could go. I really like actually, the more I think about it, I kind of like the Chase Daniel thought process. Yeah. But we'll have to see if they want to go. One of the other conversations that we're going to have start having next week is where the Chiefs stand on salary cap. And I know we're talking QBs and backup QBs, but that's going to matter because Henne was a guy I think was making $2 or $3 million a year. I know that doesn't sound like a lot when you're talking about 224, but it all plays into it for the season. So they have to take that into account. So that'll be something to watch as well.
Yeah, I think that's going to be critical. Every dollar saved is going to be interesting here. We know they can make a lot of cap space. Don't know if they're going to. I think some things have to fall. We're going to have in-depth conversation next week about the cap. We're also going to have another show based around the wide receivers and what has to happen there. There's a lot of chips yet to fall, so don't tune it out. Make sure you like, sub, and hit the bell on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe on the audio platforms because we're going to be here all offseason. I know free agency is just a couple weeks away, so be prepared for that. Obviously, the combine is coming up. You guys know how giddy I get about that. So we're going to have metrics galore from that. Make sure you sub over at NFL33.com because that's where all the draft content will be.
Franchise tag designation will be coming up in a couple of weeks too, so that's going to be something to watch.
All right, league year starts. What is it? Is it March 3rd this year?
I don't know off the top of my head, but okay. Yeah, it's not too far away.
No, it's very close.
Yeah. So it's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of things to go on for the Chiefs for the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, like getting through the Super Bowl and enjoying this week. And that's why I'm emphasizing everyone enjoy this week. Because after this, business starts right back up. There's a lot of things to do.
And it's so crazy with the additional added week this season and not really having that extra week that you would normally have really actually starts to make a difference. So
it really does.
We will have you covered 5 days a week, like Ryan said. So don't worry about that. We're going to have a lot of stuff talking about draft picks and talking about salary cap coming up next week that I'm looking forward to.
Draft picks might be a topic for Monday, folks. Enjoy your weekend. We'll talk to you then.